Finish your thought, and then we'll get a response here.
I think essentially what's gone on is that Mark Steyn wants so desperately for this to be about him and for this to be, I think you want to be a martyr. You're not a martyr because you're not a party to the complaint.
All that aside,
give it up,
hang on a second, please. Is it not legitimate to discuss the demographic figures that he outlines in his book? Is that a legitimate subject of conversation?
There's the demographic figures that are supported by evidence, and then there's the rest of it that isn't supported by evidence. But even still, the issue isn't whether he should have written that or not. The issue is he's written it. There have been 22 other similar articles in Maclean's. Where's the response? And that's, I think, what keeps getting lost. We have not asked for an apology. We have not asked for a retraction. We have not asked that Mark Steyn be
Here's my
no
problem
longer...
with this. My problem is you guys keep wanting to bring it back to journalism, and I'm trying to get onto the bigger topic here, which is what he's writing about.
But that's our issue.
But our complaint was prompted by two things. It was prompted by the content of the article and Maclean's stifling debate on this. So I appreciate the fact that you want to talk about the content of the article, but we're also here to discuss our complaints and why we filed these complaints.
I think you've made that abundantly
clear. But it's when he says things like, uses the word criminal. I mean, there's been such a gross misrepresentation of like human rights commissions and tribunals.
How would you characterize what you were attempting to do at the Ontario Human Rights Commission? How would you characterize it?
What we were trying to, Steve, just so you know, what we're asking the Human Rights Commissions to do is issue a declaration that the article subjected Muslim Canadians to hate, and we have evidence that we intend to present in that regard, and then direct them to get Maclean's to publish a mutually acceptable response.
And they said they couldn't do it. Ontario Human Rights Commission said it's not in our jurisdiction to do this.
The Ontario Human Rights Commission said they couldn't do it, but I do, and I'm glad you did bring that up because, I mean, we're thrilled with the fact that the Ontario Human Rights Commission has publicly condemned Maclean's for contributing to Islamophobia.
Hang on 1 second. They did, now, the Human Rights Commission, while saying we don't have any jurisdiction to deal with this and therefore please take it off our desks, they did say that you were contributing to xenophobia.
Well, they effectively ruled that they didn't have jurisdiction to convict Maclean's and me, but that if they did have jurisdiction, they would. They essentially issued a drive-by verdict. I've written in dozens of countries around the world. I've never had a situation where effectively you're found guilty by a court that can't even be bothered hearing evidence, either from Maclean's editors or its writers.
What do you think that says?
I think that's disgraceful, and I think these human rights commissions effectively have set up a parallel legal system that is at odds with 800 years of Canada's legal inheritance. I think that's disgraceful. But let's go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, Steve. I think it would be I wanted to come on this show and talk about, as I said, I think it's the biggest story of our time. We can have a discussion about whether it's good or bad for Western societies to become more Muslim. But to get bogged down in, I think, this rather, these rather trite matters about this grubby little human rights.
Well, I am trying to do that.
Yeah, I know you're trying. But let me just go. I don't want to take the whole show with this because I'm sure it's boring for everyone. But I was told a moment ago that I wanted to be a martyr. No, I don't. I'd rather be back sitting on my porch looking at the mountains. I don't want to be a martyr. But it was the fact that these three people misattributed to me the words of a Norwegian imam that Muslims were breeding like mosquitoes. These three people and the Canadian Islamic Congress, including in this dossier, say that Muslims are breeding like mosquitoes. Those are the words of the Norwegian
Let's get clarification on that.
I don't want to be a martyr. But can I finish? Because since that came up, I've had a ton of death threats from that. I don't want to be a martyr, but thanks to you crediting me with that line, I'm highly likely to be.
Because for those who don't know what you're talking about right now, you did quote a Norwegian imam who said, Muslims are breeding like mosquitoes.
Yes, and again, Steve, this goes
back...
Those
words weren't out of his mouth.
Yes, no, those were his. But again, Steve, this goes back to the comment...
He was quoting an imam.
Yes, they were not. We acknowledge that. Okay. What we're saying is that this goes back to one of the trademarks that he has used, which is that he hides behind quotes from Muslims, obscure Muslim figures in other parts of the world. Muslim Canadians have never even heard of this guy. Why is it that Maclean's and Mark Steyn need to jump across the Atlantic Ocean, go all the way to northern Norway, or wherever it was that he went, to find an imam who supports the themes that he himself puts forth earlier in the articles, which are that Muslims are breeding far too quickly, that they are radical, and that they wish to take over Muslim societies.
It's a global world.
So he is
It's a global world. When pictures are publish in a Danish magazine, embassies are burned in Lebanon. We're in a global world.
Well, I agree, but you see, the point is, though, is that what he is trying to say is that all Muslims in all parts of the globe are the same. And that because a Norwegian imam said that,
He's said five times on this show that's not what he's trying to say.
But that's not what his article
Steve.
says.
It's not a piece about Canada.
Now also, because Mr. Steyn mentioned this earlier about the human rights commissions, this is very important for us to clarify here. Just so you know, Steve, because there's been a lot of misinformation, the hate speech provisions of the human rights codes have been explicitly endorsed by the Supreme Court of Canada as a preferable avenue of resolving concerns related to hate speech as opposed to criminal law. And they did this in a case, R versus Keekstra, where both the majority and dissenting opinions reached that conclusion and recommended that human rights commission should be used because they don't try to criminalize expression and come up with creative remedies. Also, any decision of the Human Rights Commission, Steve, can be appealed to the civil court system, so it's not a parallel system. Also, just to be clear, our complaints in Ontario could not be heard because of a technical deficiency in the Human Rights Code in Ontario, which allows the Commission to hear complaints.
Okay, but the question is, have these commissions, which were supposed to be set up
Steve,
originally, hang on one second, just a follow-up. These commissions were set up originally to deal with housing issues and equal access to jobs, and they've now become about free speech. And the question is that right?
No, the law is evolving, and
hold on, I want to.
Give me 30 seconds and then over here.
Exactly.
30 seconds here and then back
the
over
purpose
here.
of this is the biggest the Human Rights Commission was never just set up to resolve this. The Supreme Court of Canada explicitly endorsed the hate speech provisions of the Canadian Human Rights Code in the Canada Human Rights Commission versus Taylor case, as well as the Keekstra case. So it was never just the purpose to look at employment
Steve,
and housing.
that ridiculous thought police Ontario Human Rights Commission said that if Maclean's had put these words on a sign, she would have jurisdiction and would be able to prosecute. I've put those words on a sign, and we're going to deliver it to the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And Commissar Barbara Hall, former Mayor of Toronto, who heads that ludicrous commission, is welcome to prosecute. Nobody at Maclean's has any fear of a trial because she's already convicted us. The fact is that this is the relationship between Islam and the West is one of the most fascinating questions of the age. There is nothing illegitimate in reviewing novels that address it in fictional ways or other books and sources that deal with it.
Have you crossed any kind of line, though, in your effort to analyze what you say is the greatest story of our time?
No, I don't believe I have. And I think when my accusers say, oh, well, he's hiding behind these obscure figures, Mulla Krekar is the only man in the history of Norway that the Norwegian government has attempted to deport. He's not a peripheral figure. More to the point, when he says I'm hiding behind these figures, what he means is I'm hiding behind accuracy. I'm hiding behind facts. I'm hiding behind quotations. I'm hiding behind statistics. I'm hiding behind truth. That is what writers with integrity do. They have not disputed a single fact. All they're saying is, we object to this because it offends us, because it hurts us. That's emotion, and that should not be part of the law of Canada criminalizing your fluffy feelings.
Let me pick up on that.